Hey everyone, Marcus from Live Life Your Way here, and welcome to part 2 of our Muscular Activation series. Hope you enjoyed that first video. Remember, if you're enjoying all of this, click that subscribe button, hit that little bell for notification. If you're on social media, Facebook or Instagram, click that follow button. Have a look at all the other stuff that we've got. Let's get into it. So last week we did the basics, bird dogs and Superman, basic movement patterns and activation work. Today what we're going to do is we're going to hit a little bit more hip work, a little bit more in the glutes. So we're going to start off with a simple movement, yet I'm going to be working off notes. So occasionally I'm going to reference my notes every now and again just to remind me where I'm at. Going to work off clamshell. Now, clamshell is a pretty simple exercise. Problem is most people get it wrong. The reason why most people get it wrong is their hips roll. So you want to lay down on your mat. You want your elbow directly underneath your shoulder, and you want to keep shoulder, hip, ankle in line. Then we want to bend the knees up, keeping that ankle and hip in line. We also want to keep hips directly over the top of each other. So keeping those hips directly over, make sure we engage, or ensures that we engage the correct muscles. A lot of people get lazy with it and they roll the hip a little bit. We get the wrong muscles. Best way to know that you're in the correct position is make sure those knees are directly over each other, and you'll be nice and comfortable. So from here, we want to keep the feet together and lift the knee. So we want to hinge up at the hip, lift that knee. That's clamshell. So it's lifting that knee up. All right, making sure those hips stay over each other, making sure everything keeps in alignment, and that's coming directly up. So that's a basic clamshell. When you're doing those as part of your activation routine, especially if you're initially starting, you probably want to do about 3 sets, about 12 per side. Make sure you do both sides. Always make sure you do both sides of your body. Moving on from that, we're going to work on a banded clamshell. What we want to do is get what's commonly referred to as a booty band, resistance band, and it's going to go around the legs. Please be careful when putting bands on, because they do spring back, and just like every other rubber band, they hurt when they impact. Alright, popping that just above the knees. So we're going to go back into that same position that we just had a moment ago. So elbows under the shoulder, shoulder, hip, ankle in line with the knees bent. So same position. This is a banded version of what we've just done. So lifting up at the knee. So what we're doing now is, instead of just basic activation of the movement, we're now pushing resistance against that band. So it's actually creating tension on the muscle. It's like adding weight. Okay? Same movement. So if you're doing that yourself, you want to do the same amount of sets and reps for that same movement there. Alright, what we've got next is, some people call it a hip thrust, some people call it a glute bridge. I call it a hip thrust because that's what we're doing, with thrusting the hips up. It's a movement that a lot of guys don't want to do in the gym. A lot of girls do it for their booty work. A lot of guys don't do it enough for activation work, or to at least get the glutes warmed up. They like to just go in for their deadlifts. Wrong. So important, got male or female, doesn't matter who you are, to get the correct activation for all of your movement patterns. So hip thrust. You want to be laying flat on the mat. A lot of guys don't do this because they figure, oh, it's revealing, and girls do it because they want to get the booty. But simply, it's incredibly important to get the right activation for things like deadlifting, as well as our day-to-day movement patterns. So hip thrust is going to target glute max in the hips. Feet flat on the ground. You want to try and keep those legs at around 90 degrees. So at 90 degrees, by that I mean when the torso is up, coming down at the knee, you're going to be at 90 degrees. You'll see that in the movement. Feet apart slightly. You want to put your hands on the floor, big breath in and hold. Squeeze with the butt and bring the torso up. Nice and simple. So what we're looking for here is nice straight back, hips all the way up, and you can see at the knees 90 degrees. So there's the trick with the movement though, is a lot of people roll their back up, and that is incorrect. What we want to see is breath in, hold and tighten that core, and bring the torso up so it's one solid piece. You don't want to see the back curving, because if the back's curving, then you're not using glutes, you're using your longissimus or your mid-back muscles. So, incorrect is that roll. Correct is coming up as a nice straight piece. Okay? That's simple hip thrust. Glute bridge, however you want to call it. Probably looking at about 3 sets of 10 of those as your activation work. Alright, so now we're going to go for banded hip thrust. It's basically the same as hip thrust, and same way that we amended the clamshell earlier, we're going to add the band, resistance band around the legs. And your first thought's going to be, why am I doing that? Well, the reason we're going to be doing that is because that's going to add a lateral resistance through the movement. So we're going to add more muscles in to create a larger grouping of muscles working together. So they will learn to work together to stabilize your body in your day-to-day movements as well as in your big lifts. So this adds resistance laterally through that hip thrust. So it's going to get those muscles that you need to engage down here in the hips, because that's our target today. Alright, big breath in, hold, squeeze the butt, bring the torso up, shoulders to knees, nice and straight, and then down. So that's your banded hip thrust, glute bridge. It's a movement that not everyone likes to do in a big commercial gym, because it puts you out there and everyone can see you. You know what, get over it. Don't be embarrassed about it. Just, it's a movement that you've all got to learn to do to keep good movement patterns in your body. Really simple. Alright, up next we're going to do another modification on that hip thrust, and we're going to use a medicine ball this time. So with the booty band, resistance band on there around the knees, we created a lateral movement. So it created pressure pushing in, so the muscles had to push back against that as we were coming up and down. This time around we're going to use a medicine ball between the knees, and the muscles have to push in to hold that ball in place. So we're working all your inner muscles, your adductors. Okay. Same movement pattern. Remember to keep that back and torso nice and straight. Alright. That's the modification on that one. So doing all those in conjunction, if you did, say you did several sets of those, you could do first 2 sets completely natural as a good warm-up. You could do a banded set to get your abductors, your lateral movement, external lateral movement, and then you could do a set with medicine ball in the middle to get your adductors, and that would hit everything in those hips. If you did, say 4 sets of 12 in that progression series, and that would definitely get everything warmed up, fired up, ready for your good movement patterns and your bigger lifts. Alright, up next what we're going to do is our final exercise for this video, is we're going to do a lateral leg raise. So we're going to start off in that same position as the clamshells. Now if you remember, I was explaining elbow down, elbow underneath the shoulder, shoulder, hip, ankle in line. This time we're going to work with the legs nice and straight. And in this position, you can put your hand down here to stabilize you, or you put your hand on your leg. Some people prefer this because they don't feel comfortable in this position. They feel like they're going to fall over. Making sure those hips are directly over each other. If those hips roll, which a lot of people tend to do, you end up getting the wrong movement. So the incorrect movement would be hips rolled and legs swinging all the way up here. With your hips directly over each other, you shouldn't get much movement at the hip. And this is your lateral leg raise here. This is the correct movement. Okay? You should not be able to lift that leg very high at the hip. If you can get that leg really, really high, then have a look at your hip positioning, because they're likely to have rolled. So this movement should be really restrictive in how far you can come up, because the hip's not designed to lift. It's not designed to move out in that direction. Okay, so that's your lateral leg raise. So let's go over all of those again. We had the clamshell to start with. That's a really good warm up to get all those hip warmed up. Probably 2-3 sets of those, about 10 reps per side. Make sure you do both sides. Let's go over the banded clamshell. Again, you could do that as a progression. You could start off unbanded and then go to banded through your set. We then did hip thrust, and as we talked about, we can do those as a progression. Start off unbanded, go to banded, then maybe go to medicine ball. Do that as your progression, and that's a really good warm-up set. Then your lateral leg raise is going to get the rest of the muscles in that hip all fired up, ready so you're nice and stable for your next movements. Hope you all enjoyed that. If you've got any questions, drop a comment down below, ask, and we'll see you on the next video. Remember, hit that subscribe button, click the link to the website and have a look at what we've got going on there as well. There's some new changes coming up to the website, and some new changes in how we're doing the videos. So stay safe out there. See you in the next video.